Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
I shot this Western and it was like a really difficult project. We had to be on location a lot of the times. It was freezing cold. There was a horse in it. And just being able to sort of like muscle through that was like the first time professionally I felt like a filmmaker.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast. I am so excited to welcome my guest, Rob Scheer, who's an award-winning filmmaker, and he's just an all-around great guy. So, Rob, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and share the one filmmaker secret that you have been keeping from us.
What's up, filmmakers? My name is Rob Scheer. I'm a producer-director here in Denver. And the one secret I have is, it's not really a secret for people who are maybe more experienced in this industry, but it's something I wish I knew when I was younger. And that is 10% contingency. And basically what that means is when you're budgeting a project, just add 10% to it, whatever the budget is. So like, let's say you're budgeting out a commercial or a documentary and it costs $10,000. Add an extra $1,000 to that, because basically what that does is it gives you a little bit of wiggle room up front. So for any sort of like unexpected expenses, additional shoot days, equipment you didn't know you needed. And it just is like a safety net, and also prevents you from having that awkward conversation with your client about asking for more money that you weren't expecting to spend. And on the flip side of that, if your client has a fixed budget, like let's say a person comes to you and says, hey, I want you to make this video, but I only have $5,000 for it. Kind of do the inverse of it. Basically subtract 10% from that fixed budget. So imagine that you can only spend $4,500 for that. And then that still gives you a 10% wiggle room for any unexpected costs. So 10% contingency, start adding it to your budget.
That's a great framework. And I love how you launched into the logistics of things right away, because I think a lot of times filmmakers tend to want to talk about the art and the storytelling aspect of filmmaking. But when it comes to actual logistics and funding and budgeting, it kind of gets thrown on the wayside. But that's really the foundation of the film industry overall. So I appreciate that little nugget. I like to think of filmmakers as sort of characters in their own movie, right? So I think in film school, you were probably taught this as well. About 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, our lead character has to make some sort of big decision, right? The inciting incident or plot point that they sometimes call it. What was this inciting incident? What was that one aha moment in your past that really set you on this path of filmmaking and creating films and serving the particular audience that you serve? What was that one moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to in middle school. I remember specifically 7th grade, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring came out, and that just absolutely blew my mind. Like I loved movies before that, obviously, but like seeing that in theaters was just like the craziest experience. And, you know, then obviously like the DVDs came out, and like everyone just like watched all those BTS supplements on it. And, you know, I just would watch those over and over and just be like, man, I wish, you know, I could be involved in this in some small way. And then that inspired me in high school to just, you know, start making funny little videos with my friends. And I had an English teacher, a man named Roy Say, who I showed him one of these funny videos, and he actually broke it down and talked about some of the techniques in it. And it really inspired that. It inspired me, making me think like, oh, maybe I'm good at this. But I would say the aha moment of deciding to fully pursue film was I would say, like a lot of people in high school, I thought I could be a professional musician in a rock band. And I was really pursuing that my last year of high school and my first year of college. And then after a terrible recording experience where we were recording a full album for a whole year, it just made me realize that's not what I want to do. So the year after that, I went to film school and just really wanted to dedicate all of my creativity and attention to the art of filmmaking.
How did you get started? What was like your first project that you were like, oh man, this is for me. This is my thing.
You mean like from the very beginning, or kind of more
when you started to feel like, oh, I'm melding into this position of a filmmaker? I can call myself that.
I mean, the very first project, like I remember making in high school, was this faux samurai film called Evil or Something Like It. And it was kind of a joke. Like it was just me and my friends in my backyard. And what we did was we just recorded it silently. And then after I edited it, we went back and dubbed it over like an English dub of a Japanese film. And, you know, that was the film that was like, I felt really hands-on as far as like setting up shots and editing, but I didn't really know it at the time. And then I think in film school, my third year, I shot this Western, and it was like a really difficult project. You know, we had to be on location a lot of the times. It was freezing cold. There was a horse in it. And just being able to sort of like muscle through that was like the first time professionally I felt like a filmmaker.
And you were shooting on a red at the time, right?
Not for that one. That one was, I mean, we went to film school together. So, you know, it was I think the Panasonic and then that Letus adapter, you know, the one that was supposed to make it look like film, but was all.
And it cost as much as a car.
Yeah, exactly. Car. And like the spinning lenses in it would always get stuck. I still don't understand why I used that thing, but it was
I think it was a moment in every filmmaker's life at that moment in time when that was the thing to do. And so everybody was tool trapping themselves into that, cinematic look. And the Letus adapter is the only way you can get it with these cameras. And it was so expensive. I remember researching for months and wanting to get one for myself. So I would love to talk to you about the current situation. But before we move on to, COVID and the pandemic, I'd love to hear about some of your more recent projects that you're really proud of. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So even though when I went to film school, I went to study narrative, specifically like writing and directing, I feel like most of my success in my professional career has been from documentary work. And the first project I'm going to tell you about is a web series I created called Denizen. I was really inspired by the Humans of New York blog. I think when that kind of rose to fame in like 2004 or 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to think of what the video version of that would be like. So my friend Brandon Smith and I just bought a red, and I really wanted to just like start shooting with it. So I wanted to shoot like Humans of New York, but Humans of Denver. So there's this guy who sits outside of Tattered Cover on 16th Street Mall with a typewriter. His name's Devin Kingsford, and I would pass by him all the time. And his whole thing was like, give me a topic, I'll write you a poem, and just pay me whatever you want, even if it's nothing. So one day, as I was thinking about someone to film, I just stopped and asked him like, hey, do you mind if I just film you and do like a 5-minute doc on you? And he was totally into it. So that kind of launched that project where I would just find interesting people in Denver and just shoot little like 2 to 5 minute documentaries about them. So like I did one on Robo Mike, a woman named Lisa who painted on the top of every 14er in the state, Ryan Polisky, and then Sabine Ayel, who did a lot of artwork for like City O City. So it's a project I always want to come back to, but that project really helped me develop like a style and kind of like figure out how to tell the story from the subject's perspective. So it's not so much like someone from the outside looking in, but like really getting on ground level with them. And then it's shown. I don't know if it still is, but it's shown on Colorado PBS interstitially on the weekends and was nominated for a Heartland Emmy. So I was really proud of that. And then
congratulations, brother. That's amazing.
Thank you. And then most recently I've finished and now I'm updating the ending too, but I'm working on a documentary called My Father's House, which is about a church called St. Matthew's in Aurora that ultimately closed to become an immigrant and refugee center called Village Exchange Center. And the documentary follows the pastor of that church and his journey of seeing his church essentially die, but then become reborn into something new and maybe something that's more like what a church should be. And so I say, it's completed, but I'm filming a new ending just because of everything that organization has done in the last year with COVID and helping the community. I just wanted to add that to it, just to make it a little more timely for the festival circuit this year, and just to also touch on like how much they've helped. And recently it won Best Documentary at the Emerging Filmmakers Showcase with the American Pavilion, and hopefully it'll get into other festivals this year.
Amazing. The best of luck to you in the festival circuit. As you were talking about this project, I got chills literally, because when I think about film, it's a visual medium, but photography is visual, painting is visual. So you add motion to it, you get motion picture. For those filmmakers that don't know, and you should know, that's where motion picture and the word movie really came from, is a moving picture. And you add an element of story as an ingredient to that, and you get visual motion story. And it's such a beautiful thing because it doesn't have to be narrative. The stories that you're telling don't exist unless they're put on the screen or on paper. Otherwise, they're just an existence of this particular individual. But you kind of bring all the information out of them into a nicely packaged, just like with Denizen, which I commend you for. Consistency is one of the harder things for us as filmmakers. And you were putting out the episode after, story after story. And then with this recent project, it's sort of shining light on this seemingly small event, but it's such a grandiose idea in the grand scheme of everything that's happened in the last year in this world. So is there anything else that you want to say about this latest project? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just to kind of talk about that. Like, there's this quote I read from Roger Ebert, and I searched trying to find its exact wording, but he basically said that film is the ultimate art form because it's a combination of all the art forms. And it's true. And that's also why it's so difficult, because you have to know a little bit about everything. You have to know about writing, storytelling, painting, even as far as like composition goes. You have to know about editing, sculpture with posturing, and you also have to rely on a lot of people, unlike a lot of other art forms where you sort of have to just rely on yourself. So, but I think that's why the stories are more impactful, is because you just see the culmination of just so much hard work from like every person involved. But as far as like final things with My Father's House, there's not too much to add to it. I just, really appreciate all the people that have worked on it. To call out a few, Josiah Recker is my cinematographer on it, who's an amazing collaborator and does such a great job. And then Sam Golden, our mutual friend, did the music for it. And Tim Kaminsky edited it and really kind of came in and changed so many scenes from how I was originally viewing them and just made them so much better. So those are just the people off the top of my head. And there's just a lot of people who contributed to it that I appreciate.
It's definitely a collaborative form. I consider collaboration to be the moment that you realize there are other people out there that are so much better at particular things than you. And once you can let go and realize that, then true collaboration can happen on a film set. When everybody is working towards the similar goal, the same goal, then that's when you get a really perfect process, which yields a perfect result, a perfect final product of a film story. I'd love to hear about any big roadblocks that you had shooting this project or preparing for it or editing it, and how you overcame those obstacles.
I think one of the biggest roadblocks was and I wouldn't say it was a roadblock. It was just something we had to work with, but it was just the timeliness of it, because we decided to shoot this documentary in October of 2018. And I mean, long story short, I met a woman named Amanda Blaurock, who is the like chief operator of Village Exchange Center. She's telling me their history. Her stepdad is the pastor of the church that became Village Exchange Center. And in October, when we decided to do a documentary on it, the church was closing, having their final service 1 month later. So we basically I knew if we missed that, it just wouldn't be interesting, like, cause then if we missed all of these things that were happening at the time, we would just essentially have a film that was like talking about the past, and it just wouldn't be that interesting. So we basically just had to hit the ground running and just start filming all of this stuff without, having any funding or any kind of plan. I kind of had a narrative arc in mind going into it just to give us some direction. But I mean, it was just basically like trying to grab all of these events of this transformation as it was happening. And little did I know that, I thought we could have like 2 or 3 months of principal photography. But, as the years go on, it's turned into like the next year, it's like, oh, I want to grab this thing they're doing. And then this last year, it's like, oh, I want to grab this thing they're doing. So it's like kind of adding on to that. I don't know who said it, but someone said like, films are never finished, they're abandoned. And I haven't abandoned this one just yet.
Do you think you ever will?
I mean, I'm hoping to abandon it in a good space this year, but I mean, I said that last year, so who knows?
Right. Do you have any sort of storytelling secrets when it comes to post-production, especially for a project that's a documentary film?
My secret would be don't edit it yourself, because I think originally I was kind of planning on editing it. But then, you just get so much footage and you're so attached to what happened that day of filming that you can't really see the footage for what it is. You kind of associate it with like the event you were capturing or what was going on. So it's not really a secret, but I highly recommend getting someone else who's maybe a little detached or doesn't really know much about the process to look at it, because then they'll see, these images that are connected in ways that you didn't realize, or, how these scenes can be shaped to tell the story in a much more interesting way than you would have ever thought. No,
that's definitely a secret, especially for people that don't know this insight. We tend to get really close to our work and find it really hard to, trust somebody else with this baby. But it's that moment that you actually find the trust in someone, a really good editor, somebody that can take it and find a fresh perspective and perhaps find a new story. Because you probably know this this is another quote. I don't know who said either, but a film is written 3 times, once during script writing, then during production, and the last time during post. So definitely, filmmakers, make sure that you have someone else from an outside perspective looking at your work throughout the process. It's going to help you in the long run, I promise. So Rob, that's awesome. Let's move to the present. We've talked about the past. Obviously, the world is grappled, especially the film industry, with the pandemic. I'm curious to know, how are you dealing with the current situation? And, you're the president of Colorado Film and Video Association, correct? Mm-hmm. Yep. That's amazing. So what are some of the conversations that are happening on the inside?
Man, I'm just kind of thinking about this time last year, because I'm just for your listeners, I'm speaking specifically from a filmmaker based in Colorado. So it's obviously a little different for people based in LA or New York, but I had no work from March until the end of July. And I know there were a few projects that popped up, but it seemed pretty consistent across this region that everyone was sort of just unemployed at that time. And then, the fall came and all this work came out of nowhere and was kind of surprising. But, people are adapting a lot of different ways. I know Colorado specifically, it's sort of the Wild West as far as filmmaking goes out here. There's not as many set processes to make a project. So people are a little more adaptable. Obviously, if you have a project that's like a SAG certified project, you have to follow their guidelines, which are really good guidelines that, we should just follow anyway. But most of the like corporate projects I've been doing are sort of one-man band type things. So those have been really good as far as like socially distancing while working. And then a lot of like post heavy projects too. But kind of from the Colorado Film and Video Association side of things, we really had to pivot last year from what we normally do. And as an organization, we're the largest and oldest film and video organization in the state. So we typically have like a lot of networking events and educational events, and we had to basically cancel those last year. And it felt like there were a lot of stop and goes along the way. Like, the cases are going down, so maybe we could do an event next month, and then they just shoot up and we had to cancel it. So because of last year, we were able to look more internally as an organization and work on a lot of things that we've been putting off just from sort of like the back end of it. And one of them is we're in the process of becoming a 501c3, which will help us with a lot of educational opportunities for our members, getting grants to be able to host bigger events and more educational events. And then we also started offering grants quarterly. We have 2 grants quarterly that we give out to Colorado filmmakers, and those grants change every quarter based off of what we think the need is. So currently, as of the first quarter of 2021, we're offering a female filmmaker grant in conjunction with WIFM-Co and a student filmmaker grant. So just, being able to put money back into the community, especially during this time, I'm really proud that we were able to do that. And we've just decided this year we're going to have all of our events online, just so we're not sort of waiting to get the go and see what we can do. We're just basically making that decision just so we can start planning things farther ahead and just have more of these networking events online, which I think have been working pretty well the last 2 months.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you mentioned grants, because I think filmmakers tend to think, oh, my project is not good enough for getting some money backing from the government, or it's not even worth it. What advice do you have for filmmakers that are just coming up with stories about why they're not applying for grants?
To that, I think of what's his name? Hold on, I'm looking at my bookshelf. So Timothy Ferriss, the guy who wrote The 4-Hour Workweek.
Yeah,
I think everyone knows him. But in that book, he has an anecdote that really sticks with me. Basically, he spoke at, I think it was like a Harvard or Yale class. And at the end of his lecture, he's like, all right, I'm going to be coming back next semester and I have a project for you guys. Everyone reach out to one unattainable person, someone you think is unattainable, like, I don't know, Obama, the Pope, someone that is out of your range. And whoever gets the closest to meeting that person, I'll give you a round trip ticket to anywhere in the world. So a semester goes by, he comes back to the class, and it turns out no one tried to pursue that. And he made the point, he was like, if one of you had just emailed any of these people's secretaries, you would have gotten a free round trip ticket anywhere in the world. And the example or the point he's making with that story is that people just assume that you won't, meet these people, or like you create these stories in your head that's like, oh, like if I reach out to Bill Clinton, like I won't get in touch with him anyway, so what's the point? And if everyone thinks that way, then it's almost like, oh, well, then it's easier to meet these people, reach these goals. So I would say just go into every grant assuming that everyone else thinks that their projects are not worth it too, because you never know. Like if you could be the project that wins. And, that's sort of like a logistical piece of advice, but also just like, you have to have confidence in your project. If you're not confident in your project, or you don't enjoy the project that you're pitching, you need to figure out how to make it meaningful to you. Because then if you're not confident in pitching it or applying to grants with it, then like no one else will. And I just read something recently that was like, if you're writing a story and you hate it now, you're going to hate it even more later. Like you have to make sure you're liking what you're doing. I hope that made some sort of sense.
No, that's amazing, Rob. That's perfect and beautifully put. What is next for you from this moment on going into the future? What are you working on?
Well, right now I'm currently fundraising for a short film that I was supposed to shoot last February. But then funding fell through and then a pandemic happened. So that sort of put it on hold, but we're hopefully going to be filming that late spring, early summer. It's called The Painting, and hopefully you'll see more of that. And then I'm currently writing a feature that, I can use the success of this short film that we're going to make, and then kind of use that to show people like, hey, this is what I'm capable of. Fund this feature and I can make a bigger version of this,
You're leveraging the short film for your feature to sort of move up that ladder slowly but surely.
Exactly.
That's great. Last question for you, Rob. This has been so fun. What is your desert island movie? So if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That's so unfair.
I can tell you mine if that'll help.
Yeah, tell me yours. I'm curious.
Mine is The Fifth Element.
You know what? I think I knew that. I would honestly say The Lord of the Rings, just because of like how meaningful those are. And like every time I watch them, I'm always scared. I'm like, oh man, I hope I don't watch it this time. And it's like not as good as I remember it. And it's always as good as I remember it.
So the whole trilogy, I'll give you it.
It was supposed to be one book, so I consider it like one movie,
Right. Awesome. So Rob, where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can check out my website. It's www.robshearfilm.com. I'm more active on social media, so my handle for everything is Rob Shear Film. Be that Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
That's robshearfilm.com, Rob, SHEARER film.com. And same for the handle all across all social medias. There you have it, filmmakers. Rob Shear, thank you so much for coming on Filmmaker Secrets podcast. I've absolutely enjoyed our talk, and I hope to get you back once you get the successful funding for your short film, The Painting.
Yeah, and thank you so much, George. I'm really honored to be a part of this, and I'm just so excited to see it grow.
Awesome. Filmmakers, thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.